Alright, hey guys, it's Daryl here. Just a quick video to help those who would like a hand opening up their case. So unfortunately I just kind of threw everything together here for my setup, so the lighting is terrible, so there's a lot of glare. But first thing you have to do is remove the switches. A lot of people tend to remove the back and push the switches out. That seems to be the consensus, like the easiest way to do it. I don't have a problem just sticking my thumbnail underneath and getting it. Not everyone can do that though. If you can, great. If not, then I'll show you how to push it out from the inside. To open up the Zen, you have to remove these 5 screws. The drive that's required is hex. It's 1.3, so you can get like a Allen key, or I use these Wera ones, are pretty awesome, but it has to be not going to be able to focus, but 1.3 millimeters, which is the size of the hex end. The screws are stainless steel. It is fairly easy to strip them, so take your time. I highly recommend not using, like, this is how this is a tool I use to tighten everything when I built all the Zens, but the amount of torque in there, I highly recommend using something by hand that's new and not worn, because if you strip these screws, it's a pain to get out. Trust me, you don't want to go there. So yeah, good pressure on it to make sure that it doesn't strip, and each one of these will come out nicely. There's not much to that. If you do have one that your driver's not holding on to, maybe the edges are starting to get round, try the size up if you have it, of 1.4. If not, you're going to have to try to extract that screw somehow. I can get you new ones if you need new screws, but getting them out is just a beast, so you don't want to have to do that if you don't have to. So once they're all removed, I'll just pull them out here just so that it doesn't catch when I try to pull it off the case. Sometimes it's difficult to get the base plate off of the keyboard itself, and it's purely because the polycarbonate that the base is made of is kind of a press fit into the case, and depending on how that particular one was injection molded, it might be, or the way it was sitting when it dried or whatever, there might be some extra plastic that makes it tighter than others. Usually I don't have a problem getting a fingernail between, let's see if I can get this a little closer, between the case and this little plastic round over here, which is where the antenna of the module is. Another good place is in the USB slot. You can usually lift it there. It depends on how strong your fingernails are, but I usually have the most luck here and just kind of raise it up. Polycarbonate is quite strong, so I don't think you have to worry about breaking that. And I know that because I once stripped a screw and thought it would be easier to snap the base plate and extract the screw that way, and it took me forever. Like, these are really quite strong, so you don't really have to worry. You worry more about scratching it than bending it and cracking it. So anyways, once you got it off, you can see all of the switches have the little legs sticking through, and you can simply either, again, use a fingernail, or I often use the back side of my X-Acto knife, which I, of course, didn't get prepared for this video, but let's see, wherever it is, and you use it to push out. I'll use this, maybe just something that's round and flat so that you know exactly what you're pushing on, and then press those, and that should make the switch come out fairly easy. So you have to go right across the back and do that. Now, word of caution, try as much not to handle the PCB side, the bottom side especially, with the finger and like sliding. The little diodes here above each hot swap socket are very delicate. There's very little metal holding those on, and they can be knocked off quite easily. So if if you need leverage, put your thumb on top of a hot swap socket. That won't be going anywhere. Or from the sides. The sides is the safest. That's how I recommend handling the PCB once it's out. But yeah, those little diodes can come off pretty easy. And you really don't want that to happen because it's a nuisance. So they often tear a pad off the PCB, and then you have to get the PCB replaced. So yeah, don't do it. So we just go through taking off the switches so that we can remove the PCB from the case. So while I'm doing this, we'll talk a bit about what the problem is. There's circuitry around the USB port to prevent any static shocks from transferring from the outlet. Like if you were to plug in a USB cable, your hand could be charged or whatever, and that would pass static to the USB port. The outside shielding has got components that are used to trap and dissipate that that ESD or static to the ground plane of the PCB. But if the static comes from somewhere else, not necessarily at the plug, it can actually find the shortest path to the ground plane, and in this particular instance, it appears that it's using the little pads on the top of the keyboard that are used for flashing the module. They're referred to as SWD pads, and as a keyboard user, you'll never have to use that. It's more about initially flashing the module, the Bluetooth module. So there's little pads just above the screen on the top side that we're going to cover with some Kapton, or anything that you might have that can kind of electrically insulate those pads from the case, because it's what I believe is happening is that static is transferring through the case to those little pads which are under here, and it's close to the USB port. So it could be that you reach in, your finger touches the case, causes a static shock, and that transfers to the PCB. And because there's no components like this attached to the SWD pads, it's finding its way directly to the module and frying columns and rows and the whole thing sometimes. So yeah, short sight on my side not to cover those when assembling all of these keyboards, and because I feel that this fix is simple enough that most people should be able to perform it. I'm not doing a massive recall and having everyone send their keyboards back to me, which would be not fun. But yeah. All right. So all of the switches are out. At this point, the PCB should be free and clear. The battery is loose, so you might want to keep your eye on that. You want to avoid putting any pressure on the ribbon cable that attaches the screen through the other side of the PCB. But if you put a finger in one of the keyholes and lift, it should come free. There are what's referred to as mouse bite holes along the side. Those are just where the frame attached to the PCB when it was in for assembly. That gets snapped off and there's rough areas. Sometimes those can be a little more pronounced than what this one is. Again, this crummy camera doesn't focus very well, but it might make it a little harder to get it in and out of the case, but there's nothing mechanically holding the PCB in the case once you relieve it from the switches. So yeah, you lift it out. Again, try to handle it from the edges. If we flip it over, you're going to see just above the screen there's 4 little silver pads. If yours look yellow like this, then you're good. You're already fixed up. There's no worry. But most people are not going to have that little yellow piece of clear tape on top of those pads. So this is what's referred to as capped-on tape. And where did I throw that roll? There it is. Usually comes in a roll like this. You can get it on Amazon if you really want, but there's a lifetime supply here if this is all that you have to use it for. They come in different thicknesses. You probably want to get as thin as you can because this is really not that thick. This tape was probably around 3 millimeters wide, which is I don't know, 0.114 inches. So if you have too much sticking over the edge of the PCB, there's a chance when you put it back in that it might lift the tape off the PCB if it's not super sticky tape. So I would suggest cutting it to the 3 millimeter width prior to trying to apply it. Also, right here is an LED. So that's the blue LED for when the keyboard's in bootloader mode. You don't want to cover that with especially your yellow tape. And well, if you're using like electrical tape or something, it'll completely block out the blue. But with the yellow, it'll change the color probably to green. So you want to avoid covering that LED with the tape. So really it needs to be 3 millimeters and probably 10, 11 millimeters long. You can get away with longer if you overlap it on the other side. So maybe 12 millimeters long, and you can make it run longer this side. But that's all that needs to be done to protect this from having any ESD transfer to these pads. And then once your tape is on there, I would just give it a nice little burnish to make sure that it's down good, and then you can put it back in the case and put your case back on, or put your base plate back on. When you're putting the base plate back on, I highly recommend starting by the antenna of the module, because that always seems that it's got vertical sides, so it's harder to get in when the rest of the case is in. So you can put that in and then just start your way around, pushing it down, and then when you get to the last corner, it'll probably snap a little bit, and that's all that's required. You just go around, make sure there's no gaps or odd looking spaces or whatever, and then once that's done, it's just a matter of putting the screws back in. And again, you don't want to over tighten them. It's just a matter of getting them finger tight, and then maybe a quarter of a turn more. You're not really going to wreck the polycarbonate base, but it makes it that much harder to get them out again if you ever have to remove the back again. So yeah, that's all that's required for this fix. If you have any questions, you can hit me up in Discord. I'll try to be a little more attentive over the next couple days to if people have questions, but yeah, I'll do my best to help everybody out. Now, if you're not comfortable doing this fix, then we'll have to work something out. You'll have to send me a DM, and we'll have to figure out, perhaps we can find someone in your area that is a little more confident in replacing this for you, or worst case, sending it back to me, and I'll do the fix for you. It's just, shipping is a killer, so that's going to be something we'll have to work out. At any rate, thanks for watching. Sorry for the problems, and catch you next time.